Your legs feel heavy before you even stand up. Your heart is loud in your own ears. Everyone is watching you, waiting for you to either become a legend or become a headline. And there is no version of this moment where nobody notices. That is what it feels like to walk up and take a penalty kick in a World Cup final. But here's the strange part. That same tightness in your chest, you have felt it too. Maybe not in a stadium, maybe in a job interview, or right before you hit send on an email that could change everything, or in the silence before you had to speak up in a room full of people smarter than you. You assume champions feel less fear than you do, but the real reason has nothing to do with fearlessness at all. The truth is almost insulting in how simple it sounds. Champions are not less afraid. They've just built a different relationship with the fear itself. Think about the last time your hands actually shook before doing something important. That shaking is not weakness. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do. Your body cannot tell the difference between a lion and a penalty kick with the whole world watching. Both triggered the same flood of adrenaline. Both spike your heart rate. Both narrow your focus down to a single point. The Norwegian sports psychologist Geir Jordet has spent years studying exactly this moment, frame by frame, using footage from World Cup shootouts going back decades. He found something almost nobody expects. The players who miss are not the ones who are more scared. They are the ones who avoid the moment. They rush to the ball. They refuse to look at the goalkeeper. They take less than 1 second to compose themselves before striking. Meanwhile, the players who score again and again under insane pressure do something almost boring by comparison. They slow down, they take a breath, they actually make eye contact with the goalkeeper before the kick, which sounds small but is not small at all. Why does that matter? Because eye contact is not about intimidation, it is about staying present instead of dissociating. The missing players are trying to escape the moment as fast as possible. The scoring players are choosing to stay inside it. That single decision, stay or flee, is the entire mindset difference. Not talent, not raw courage, a choice made in less than 3 seconds to remain present instead of numbing out. You do this too, more often than you think. When an email feels overwhelming, you skim it too fast and hit reply before you have actually processed what it says. When a hard conversation is coming, you rehearse an exit line before you have even heard the other person's response. You are rushing the kick. You are refusing to look at the goalkeeper. Here is where it gets more interesting and slightly uncomfortable. The psychologist Roy Baumeister spent decades researching something called ego depletion, the idea that self-control works a little like a muscle. Use it heavily in one moment and you have less available for the next. For years, this theory suggested athletes and high performers under pressure should eventually crack because the mental cost of staying composed should drain them. But something did not add up. The best performers in the most pressure-soaked moments of their careers were not more drained. They were often sharper, calmer, more precise than they were in low-stakes situations. So what was actually happening? Later research, building on and challenging Baumeister's original model, pointed to something different. It is not that elite performers have a bigger tank of willpower, it is that they have trained their mind to interpret pressure as meaningful instead of threatening. The exact same racing heart that one person reads as panic, another person reads as readiness. Same body, same chemistry, completely different story attached to it. This is called a reappraisal, and it is one of the most well-documented tools in performance psychology. You are not removing the nervous energy, you are relabeling it. I am scared becomes I am ready. My hands are shaking becomes my body is preparing. That sentence sounds almost too simple to matter, but the data on this is not soft. Studies on reappraisal, going back to work popularized by researchers like Alison Wood Brooks at Harvard, show that people who consciously reframe anxiety as excitement before a high-pressure task consistently perform better than people who try to calm themselves down. Trying to calm down fights your body's natural state. Reframing works with it. Champions are not calmer than you. They have simply stopped fighting the storm and started reading it as fuel. Now, here is the twist that changes everything about how you should think about pressure. We assume elite performers were just born with nerves of steel, That belief is comforting, actually, because it lets you off the hook. If they were simply built differently, then your own shaking hands in high-stakes moments just prove you are not one of them. But Anders Ericsson, the researcher whose work eventually shaped our entire modern understanding of expertise, found something that contradicts the nerves of steel myth completely. Elite performers are not calm because they are naturally fearless. They are calm because they have rehearsed the specific conditions of pressure so many times that the moment itself becomes familiar territory instead of foreign territory. A striker who has taken thousands of practice penalties, including penalties taken deliberately while tired, deliberately while their coach is yelling, deliberately with noise blasted through speakers to simulate a hostile stadium, is not entering the real moment blind. Their nervous system has already lived through a rough approximation of this exact chaos dozens of times in controlled conditions. This is the part almost nobody applies to their own life. You do not build composure by hoping you will magically feel confident when the real moment finally arrives. You build it by deliberately practicing under conditions that mimic the discomfort in advance, so the real moment feels like something your body already recognizes. Think about how differently that reframes your own version of pressure. The difficult conversation you have been avoiding, you could rehearse it out loud, alone, before it happens, instead of hoping the right words appear in the moment. The presentation that terrifies you, you could practice it standing up with real stakes attached instead of only reading through your notes, sitting calmly at a desk where nothing feels real. Champions do not wait for pressure to teach them how to handle pressure. They import pressure early, on their own terms, so the real version arrives already familiar. There is one more piece to this, and it might be the most overlooked one. Carol Dweck's research on mindset showed something that applies directly here, even though her original work was about children in classrooms, not athletes on a field. She found that people who view a skill as fixed, something you either have or do not have, collapse under difficulty because failure feels like proof of a permanent truth about who they are. But people who view a skill as something built over time interpret failure completely differently. A missed shot is not evidence that you are a failure. It is simply data. Uncomfortable, but temporary and correctable. Watch how elite players talk after a brutal loss in a World Cup. The ones who recover fastest rarely say some version of "I am not good enough." They say some version of "that would not happen again." One sentence closes the door on growth, the other one keeps it open. This is not really about soccer. This is about the 4 seconds after any failure in your own life, the meeting that went badly, the decision that backfired, the moment you froze when you needed to speak. The story you tell yourself in those 4 seconds decides whether that failure becomes information or becomes identity. So here's the actual mindset shift, stripped down to its simplest form. You do not need to feel less fear. You need to stop treating fear as a stop sign and start treating it as a signal that something in front of you actually matters. You do not need to eliminate pressure from your life. You need to practice small versions of it on purpose. So the real version, whenever it arrives, feels less like an ambush and more like a rehearsal you already survived. And you do not need every attempt to succeed. You need every failed attempt to end with the sentence "that would not happen again" instead of the sentence "I am not good enough." Tonight or tomorrow, some small moment is going to ask more of you than feels comfortable. Your hands might shake a little. Your heart might beat a little too loud in your own ears. That is not the moment falling apart. That is your body preparing. Look up, take the breath, take the kick.